Good morning. It is about 10:13 on September the 28th, 2021, and we are here in council chambers with our first meeting of contract negotiations between the city of Lamarque and the police union. Great day, great to be here with each and every member of this group. Certainly, before we start, we'd like to make introductions so that we all might be familiar with one another, and then we'll go into our ground rules. And so I am Keith Bell, and I'm the mayor of this city, and certainly I am the representative of our community at large.
Chase Carey, the interim city manager for the city of Lamarque.
My name is Gus Knable. I'm the interim city attorney for the city of Lamarque, and I will be the chief negotiator for the city side during these negotiations. Present on Zoom is Miss Susie Koo. She is the finance director for the city of Lamarque and will be assisting us with financial issues. And she's not part of the formal negotiating team, but Miss Patty Reese is also here taking notes for the city of Lamarque.
So I'm Gilbert Rodriguez. I'm the president of the Lamarque Police Officers Association.
I'm John Kerr. I'm the director of local union services for the Combined Law Enforcement Associations of Texas. And I'm here as a lead negotiator to assist Lamarque Police Association.
I'm Conan King. I'm a member of the Lamarque Police Association.
There's two other members of the police negotiations team that are not present currently because of a working shift last night. And that's Kenneth Hernandez and also Calvin Harper. Or Harper. Yes.
So moving to the ground rules, Mr. Kerr and I have discussed and we have agreed, the negotiating teams have agreed to ground rules. I'll go over those briefly here, and we will get those to Mr. Hunter, Kyle Hunter, who is the city's IT. He's the head of the city's IT department, that he will be able to post those online, and both sides have signed copies of the ground rules. So briefly, both the city and the Lamarque Police Union will appoint a negotiating committee of no more than 5 members, including the chief negotiator. We have previously introduced ourselves. Both teams reserve the right to bring in legal counsel or other specialists needed for the various presentations, but the negotiating teams are as they are consistent today. If any, and then each side will advise if there is a change in the negotiating teams. The chief negotiators have the authority to make tentative commitments on behalf of both sides. Those tentative commitments are subject to ratification on the police union's behalf by the police union, on the city's behalf by the city council. And that also all parties agree that the tentative agreements agreed to by the chief negotiators are subject to final approval by both sides, and an agreement to the entire contract. The negotiation sessions will be open in accordance with Chapter 174 of the Local Government Code, as well as the Texas Open Meetings Act. They will be open to the public. The city of Lamarque has chosen to stream those via its YouTube and public access channels as well. There will be recordings of the negotiations that the city of Lamarque will post on its YouTube channel. Those recordings will also be made available to both sides. After the third meeting, excluding this initial meeting, there will be no new proposals presented by either side, absent a mutual agreement of each side to present a new proposal. However, this does not preclude either side from making counter proposals to the other party's initial proposals. Both sides agree that the negotiations team will not contact, and their members will not contact other members of the opposing side, such that The city will not contact union members outside of the negotiation team regarding matters affecting the police CBA negotiations. And the same applies for the police contacting the city on matters related to union negotiations. And that's pretty much the initial ground rules. And what I would also like to say, I would like to say thank you to the police union and Mr. Kerr for their understanding on the city of Lamarck's behalf with Tropical Storm Nicholas. We appreciate your willingness to reschedule these meetings and the ease of which you were to work with in doing that. And we appreciate that. So to begin with, and the mayor and Mr. Carey will speak to this initially, or will speak in more detail to this, but as the police union is no doubt aware, in July of this year, the top 5 officials at the city of Lamarck, civilian employees, all left within 24 hours notice of each other. That has left the police union with a interim police chief who is, while not technically a member of the union during the term of his interim police chief, during that term, he is and will be, if he is not hired full-time, will go back to being a member of the police union. So as we move through these negotiations, an essential member for the city would generally be the police chief to speak to operations issues, to advise the city on not the union's concerns on the union's behalf, but advise the city on how to address those concerns. The city of Lamarck, we don't have that right now. We have every confidence in Chief Wagner. But we also do feel that it is unfair and presents an unwaivable conflict of interest to ask him to negotiate against his own union. That is just fundamentally unfair, and we don't want to do it. We have not even asked Chief Wagner to do that. So given that, in speaking with Mr. Carey and speaking with the mayor, the city is actively involved in or actively engaged in posting the police chief position, and will be moving forward with hiring a full-time police chief. So given those parameters, one of the things that we would be looking at here would be an extension of the current CBA for 1 year to allow the city to hire a police chief, a full-time police chief, and that way to allow the sides, because we also understand that through no fault of anyone's, that these negotiations would typically occur months before they're occurring now. That would allow, so that we would be able to hire a police chief, and that would allow the sides to have more substantive and we believe fruitful negotiations. And Chase and the mayor will speak to the operational issues that have been faced with the sudden and abrupt exodus of the management team here.
Like to, Mayor?
You want to go?
Sure. Well, good morning, fellas. As Gus stated, we all know what's transpired over the last 3 months and has really set us back. We're all wearing different hats at the moment, and we are all being asked to step up throughout the entire city just to keep operations moving forward. We believe it would be best for the city and for the police union, police department as a whole, for us to, come to an agreement of the current, just come to an extension of the current agreement so we can have more solid ground, have more solid leadership. We don't want to put Chief Wagner in that position. And we wouldn't, like Gus said, we've never even asked him to do so. So that's why we're speaking about the extension, and we just find it best for both parties.
Good morning, guys. Let me just say thank you to our police officers. for your service in our community. It has been a rough year, certainly. We have moved through Winter Storm Uri, where many of your members contracted COVID, terrible disease that impacted not only this police department, but your families as well, many members of our community. We have moved through a tumultuous summer, where there's been a lot of changes and a lot of transition, not only in your department, but throughout our entire organization, as well as moving through here recently, Hurricane Nicholas. And let me say to you guys that on every occasion, you all have stepped up to the plate, and I'm proud of you for that. I honor you for that. And certainly, this city will repay you and your members for all of the hard work and sacrifice that you all have shown, and the loyalty that you all have shown through this time of regrouping and gathering together. I want to thank you for working with Interim Chief Wagner and Interim Manager Carey and being patient and hardworking and helpful and resourceful. We want to make sure that you all are stable. The word of the season for this city is stability. We are moving, transitioning from a tumultuous time to a time of stability. That means that our operations have to be stable. That means that your department has to be stable. And we've done some things here to try to bring you stability. One of the things that we did, and we were fortunate enough to do, and Mr. Carey and Chief Wagner were instrumental in this, is that we brought back former Chief Randall Argon, who was a comfort for our department as well as for our community. And certainly we are leaning and depending on him and Mr. Wagner and Mr. Carey to help reorganize and reshape your department in a way that will help best allow you all to do your job effectively and in a way that you know how. Let me just also say that outside of this negotiation, this council has passed a budget that provides tremendous resources for your department. We are adding another criminal investigation division officer. I believe that would be a detective. We're adding 2 street crimes officers to help bolster your effort to combat some of these plaguing issues that we've been having. We have also added a narcotics division officer that will help with some of the narcotics issues that we may or may not have in our community, as well as a deputy chief to help steer the operations, to move the operations forward in a positive way. We've also added mental health resources to you all so that we can make sure that you and your members have the ability to receive help, because the job that you do is a job like no other. And we realize that it takes a toll on you mentally. It takes a toll on your families. And so those are just some of the things that we've added outside of this negotiation to show that we support you, and we'll continue to add those things so long as we are able to. Because if you don't have a safe city, then you don't have a city at all. And you and your members are instrumental to that safe city idea. So again, I just want to thank you. It's a privilege and an honor to sit at the table with you, to negotiate with you, and to hear your stories and to understand your concerns and your needs. So moving forward again, guys, thank you. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you do. And I'm excited about all of the things that you will do.
Well, let me just thank y'all for meeting with us and going through this whole process. And while we understand the spot the city is in with not having a lot of permanent fixtures in place, at the same time, there's a lot of language and things in the contract that we feel definitely needs to be addressed. And whether it's a 1, 2, or 3-year contract, if I don't try to get the best possible contract I can for my members, then I'm not doing them any justice being their president. So, you know, that's, I just wanted to put that out there.
We certainly want to entertain the offer that the city has given with regards to an extension. We feel compelled, though, to bring certain things to your attention, and we were prepared to do that at this meeting. Try to make you aware of some of the issues that our members are concerned about, and not that everything can be resolved in, the current situation we find ourselves in. Like I said, we'll have to discuss that, but we had prepared some materials for the city that we think are still pertinent, whether or not it's a 1-year extension or whether it's a multi-year contract. And so one of those is a current salary survey that will give the bargaining team an opportunity to understand positionally where Lamarck police officers stand within the immediate community around us, and why there is some concern on their part with regards to the pay issue. So we've already correlated. So there's 2 pieces. The first is a salary survey, and then the second is the current salary structure within the police department now. So everybody has it readily available. And so I'm sure the city's team fully understands that any extension would have to be ratified by the membership. And
Absolutely.
so any discussions that we take up with that, we want that to be in the context that our membership knows that we progress forward with the most important aspect that they're concerned about right now, which has to do with pay. We had some proposals that we wanted to, lay on the table that would modify the contract language negligibly, not too awfully bad, but things that are that have come up in the operation over the last 3 years, which has lent itself to further clarification so that the process to go forward, and whether that be for 1 year or for multi-years, we feel strongly that these are just common sense changes that we would want to recommend to you, and because they've been brought to us by the members. So depending on how you'd like to proceed, we could caucus and discuss the extension at length if you'd like, or we can go ahead and lay out a few of the issues that we had for you. At least they're on the table if you wanted to. Some of these things, I understand. Well, first of all, I trust that the city's legal advice would be competent to respond to any of the language changes that we would lay out. And they really don't have to do with operational aspects of the police department, more so than they are clarifications of issues that have arisen and or cleaning up the language that is no longer necessary even for a 1-year extension.
So it's on the city's behalf. One, we're prepared to discuss those changes that you, we obviously had some things we wanted to discuss as well. But I believe from the city's perspective that the more we hear the more feedback we have from the police union of what they need to do their jobs, the better. So we would be happy to hear those concerns you have now. If you want to caucus on the extension first and come back and communicate those concerns to us, it's up to the union. We'll leave that to you.
Would you mind if we can provide you copies, so that way while we're caucusing, you would obviously have the opportunity to look over them.
Copies of the proposed changes? Yeah,
We
sure.
brought material
Absolutely.
for you today, so
Absolutely.
that way, in the interest of everyone's important time, I'm thinking the more information we give to you, the more opportunity you have. And now the term of the contract obviously is up for negotiation.
Correct.
When we prepared these proposals, our intention was to communicate to you that we'd like to try to do a 3-year agreement. But that's all going to be relative to what, goes on here today. So what I have is copies, which would be amending the contract language to incorporate salary increases as they were laid out for a 3-year program, which could be, doesn't have to be that way, in other words. And so depending on whether or not it's intended to be a 1-year extension or a 3-year contract for the future, we hear you with regards to the extension, and we certainly want to give that a consistent contemplation. We can do that during the caucus, but by the same token, this will give you the opportunity to know some of the issues that the membership are extremely concerned about, and give you the opportunity to review it.
And a question I had about your salary survey, a clarification point for the city of Lamarque, these salaries. And we will of course confirm with Susie, but I believe that there was a 2% cost of living adjustment that was put into the 2021-2022 budget. Do these salaries reflect that? Or are they salaries as of today?
These are what is represented to me to be the current salary
Okay.
structure
As of today.
Okay. And also it is, and we can obviously discuss this later too, but are these going to be the comparables you want to use for the compensation discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
And with the footnote that we surveyed the local market as we see it.
Right.
That's always open for discussion. with
Right.
The mayor and the council and what they think as well, but we wanted you to get a sense of where we see Lamarque police officers having the capability to drive to a new job site within a close proximity. And then becoming an officer in another city who has a comparable lateral transfer program. And so, we didn't go through a specific methodical process where we selected cities of population. And we just took the immediate geographic area, which represents arguably the competitive job market around here right now. And the numbers are such that it bears up that there is a discrepancy in pay that the city might want to consider, even in a 1-year scenario, is having an impact on, so that we don't lose any additional police officers to other venues, and so that we also resolve some of the market adjustment situations that you find yourself in over the exercise of the previous pay structure that lasted for 3 years. You may or may not be aware of some of the discrepancies that we find, and so it's just we kind of want to bring that to your attention and make sure that whether the problem is kicked down the road for a year to be resolved or not makes a huge difference in your retention ability for the officers that you currently have employed by the city. And so we would argue that it's something that the mayor and council might want to look at and address, even in a 1-year extension circumstance. At least do something that makes the officers here understand that you're going to work in advance. Like I said, I'm not entirely sure how you have done this in the past, but what I chose to do was to take the actual language of the contract, and then in any area where we're removing language, or we're striking it out in red, and then any proposed language is underlined in blue. So that way anyone who's reading the document clearly understand exactly what the end result would be. And like I said, all this is relative. If it were the will of the members to work on a 1-year extension basis, then all this would be modified. But the necessity of having 3 attachments for 3 separate, documented salary increases would not be at the table today. It would, however, be our suggestion that we consider some changes to the pay plan, even in light of a 1-year extension, so that we can stop the turnover ratio and also create a more attractive environment for you to be able to recruit police officers.
Okay. And just so, just the police pay survey that you presented to us, for the city of Galveston, the city of Lamarque and League City, there are notations below the population numbers. What do those notations, for Galveston, it's PO2, Lamarque is step B, and League City is P1. What are those notations?
I'm sorry.
That's how the each city defines, like a PO2 for the city of Galveston is a police officer
Okay.
2. So that would be their pay scale for
Okay.
a police officer 2. We in the city of Lamarque, we call it a step B.
Okay.
As to
Okay.
where, and so on and so on. So each city labels the second tier step something different.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And what I would point out to you is that I conducted the survey, so any questions that you have, I can provide you with the actual pay plans that we obtained from all the different venues. And so we don't want the argument to be about the numbers. We want the argument to be about, it is accurate, and we can give you the supporting detail. We'd also point out that a majority of the cities are in the process, as you know, of budget. Some of them are contracts, some of them are budgeted cities, but we anticipate that each of these cities is going to grant a rate. And in some cases, we already know what that rate is going to be because of the contract. And so we want to point out to you that this is the position today, and not after October 1st. This is the position today based on the previous budgets approved by the respective councils and the pay plans adopted by those venues. And so the market will change, and there will be an increase in the market, and we could share with you those numbers because we already know what they are. But for the purposes of this survey, I just wanted to give the city's bargaining team an idea within the context of the market where Lamarque police officers fare, and then understand that after October the 1st, after every other city has adopted a raise or not, then that position could change. But we know that we can communicate to you the information that we already know. And I'm sure your HR director is aware of the same information. It's not, they're not secret. So, and I would also assume that your team would look to the HR director to be the person that has her fingers on the pulse of what these numbers are and could work through this and verify it. I would want to point out that since every city is a little different in the way that they hire someone and the salary that they place that person in when they hire them, whether they be a recruit or if they be a certified officer, for comparison purposes, we thought it was important to draw a benchmark. And that benchmark is the step in the police pay plans of the respective venues that has 1 year of service. Because if you hire someone in the beginning rate and then they stay there for 1 year, you'll find that prevalent in a couple of cities. If you find a hiring salary for a what I'll call a recruit, someone who's not trained, it might be at one level. And then once they get out of the police academy and have raise their right hand, become a commissioned police officer, they have another rate. And they're all over the map in that context because everybody tries to be competitive on the higher end. So we want to draw a basis of comparison that would actually be apples to apples. So we selected the 1 year officer rank or grade or step and use that for comparison purposes between the different venues. And so that gives you an idea. Your hiring salary may be lower or higher. I can't, it's not plotted here. And so, but I would suggest to you that the hiring salary for a untrained person is really relative to where they get promoted to once they become police officers. So, and as far as the information goes, we just want you to kind of get an idea of where this is. So if there is an extension without any consideration of any salaries with regards to, all the employees, but specifically we're talking about police here today, that's just going to exacerbate the situation. As you can see, officers at least that 4.5% behind the market. And that's all relative to definitions too. I'm sure you will rely on your HR professional, but we plotted to the market median, which is basically the 50th percentile of pay for everyone. So we're not saying the 75th or the 100th percentile are being the top. We're saying that just on a pure comparison basis, our experience is that most organizations want to know what that midpoint is. And so that's what we're displaying to you. What the council's stated prerogative is with regards to how it pays in comparison to other cities is y'all's prerogative. We just felt like that at least showing you the middle of the road or the middle of the pace for all these different venues gives you a really good sense of where your officers are paid.
And the numbers, do they reflect base salaries, or are they going to reflect salaries with associated benefits? I don't want to say benefits, but there are a number of merit pay, qualification pay proposals. Do these comparables reflect merit or those types of benefits being added?
Well, let me address your question this way. The biggest majority of the cities that are contained on this are civil service cities as well. And
Right.
That's not to say every one of them. And so they are mandated by Chapter 143 of the Local Government Code with regards to how they pay and so forth. So this comparison only compares what we would refer to as a base pay or a base step range pay for a police officer. All these venues also have similar types of additional pays, whether it be educational incentive pay, certification pay, performance is not really in the factor for these cities.
Understand, it's specialty pay,
or
I believe may have
But
been.
there is one city in the mix here that I couldn't, in good conscience, and it's listed as unverified. I can't tell you how they move through their pay plan. These others I can because they have copies of their pay plan. It's very, very distinctively like many other civil service plans, and it's based on tenure or attainment of certain goals. But it's considered to be a lawful plan within the context of Chapter 143. So some of the things that you will encounter in our proposal or our effort to try to bring Marque into the realm of what some of these other cities have with regards to assignments pay or specialty assignment. And so, roughly we're talking about pays that the biggest majority of the venues have. And so we're talking about assignments pay, specialty pay. Everyone pays longevity, as you know, by state law. So we haven't really given you a breakdown comparison of what we normally call it drag up pay or specialty pay or however. We haven't plotted that for you. We certainly would consider doing that if you'd like for that to happen. But every one of these venues has those things. They have, and so at whatever level they are, which might be the benchmark comparison that you see. But I trust that your HR director would have ready access to those numbers as well. So
Right, yeah, I want to make sure, as you said,
Yeah.
we don't want to argue over what these numbers entail.
Absolutely.
I just figured, instead of us trying to recreate your own calculations, I just ask, but the specialty pay is not baked into these numbers.
No,
Okay.
so it doesn't include specialty pay, assignment pay, educational incentive pay. These are all handled in each venue differently, but for the most part, they're all the but they all have them, and as does Lamar. Now, we have, everything is open for interpretation and negotiation sometimes. We've added some things in now that may not necessarily be our prevalent idea if we were looking at a 1-year extension. Because in a 1-year extension, some of these things might need to be discussed out. And I don't think any chief of police that you hire or one that you've had would argue that these incentives are not appropriate. Now, the amounts, whether you have them or you don't, I mean, that's always been a city council initiative, if you ask me, with regards to civil service cities, but they are what we find in the competitive marketplace and nearby here. So, and everything's relative, as you well know. So we just wanted to give you an idea, since we've already put the work into putting these things up. I think you benefit from the knowledge. And that's what we wanted to lay at your feet, so that you have an idea of where the minds of the officers who would vote on this agreement, where they are right now. And so, anything to add to that, or?
No, you pretty much summed it up.
Well, I appreciate all the work that you put in, and I appreciate both myself and the council, I'm sure, and Mr. Carey as well, appreciate you bringing these to our attention. We will absolutely take a look at them. If you want to take a break now and caucus over our proposal of an extension, we'll obviously talk about the items you presented to us, and we can come back and negotiate some more.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Sounds good.
all right.
Hello, we are back with our negotiations, the City of Lamarck's negotiation with the Lamarck Police Association. We caucused to consider certain proposals from the Police Association. We're back so that we might respond to those and then have a dialogue as it relates to those proposals. And so, Gus, you want to lead us into the discussion?
Absolutely. So I'll just start with the first, we'll leave the pay issues to the end. But I'll start with the other proposals that the Marque Police Union had proposed, beginning with Article 12, the declared emergency closing. We are not necessarily, after speaking with the negotiation team, we are not necessarily opposed to a time and a half rate for officers who work during a declared disaster. But we would, and we will propose language to do this. We would like to clean up that that rate, that pay will only be during times once the city manager has sent home non-essential personnel. Our belief is that while we understand where the union is coming from with the wanting it for wanting the time and a half for the pendency of the declared disaster, we are still technically under the declared disaster.
Yes, right.
So and we don't think that the union was trying to say that time and a half would apply for the pendant cleanup, but I think and not to put words into the union's mouth, but during the time that a storm is both imminent and during the time it is over the city and life-saving efforts are being undertaken before power is restored and that sort of thing, that's what the time and a half proposal was.
Yes, sir.
Would cover. And so we will propose language that we think addresses that.
Yes, sir. We can concur with your position and think that, language is everything. So
Understandable. Then Article 15, Article 25, the safety and equipment. First, I would begin by saying that in this new budget, the Lamarck City Council has allocated money to provide the police officers with new uniforms. Number one, I have that number.
with what now?
Yes, and that is the amount, $28,000 is being allocated in this new budget to provide for new uniforms. And then that being said, we will concur with the $85 monthly for uniform maintenance. I just wanted to point out that there will be new uniforms being provided as well, some amount. Article 26, the departmental fitness program. We're not, just some language here. This plan, we would propose, we're not opposed to the changing compensation for it, but the Lamarck City Council will need to sign off on that plan. Currently, I believe it's just the chief and the association, but we would need, as I said, council approval of that plan. Okay. And then we did not discuss it before we broke. So I'll discuss it now. Again, I don't have language to propose to you for this section, but just something for you to consider. Currently in Article 34, dealing with internal investigations, for an investigation to begin, a citizen must submit a sworn notarized affidavit. we feel that that's too onerous of a process. We would just like, what the change we propose would be that a citizen file a complaint with the internal affairs officer. So what we would remove is the sworn and notarized app portion of that. That would be the change there. And then moving on to the money. As an initial statement, we appreciate the police department's survey that was provided to us. We feel that a number of these cities are not appropriate for comparison to Marque. We understand the vicinity, but we feel that the cities, for whatever reason, are in a different position, either population or tax base wise. Those cities are the cities of Friendswood, the city of Galveston, League City, Pearland. We feel that Santa Fe is a more apt comparable, as well as we feel Seabrook and Alvin are also apt, more appropriate comparables. Those cities are civil service cities. So moving to the proposed pay structure itself.
Well, let me ask you a question in
Sure.
regards to those. What is the, what are the cities that routinely HR would survey if asked by council to tell them what the local market would be?
Sure, yeah, it would generally be Seabrook, Alvin, Santa Fe.
Correct.
Yeah, similar, 10 to 30,000 population cities in the area.
Would it be possible for HR to provide us with a list of those cities?
Absolutely. So I will tell you, we have, we appreciate the rates that are being proposed and the issues that the union is raising with these rates. We are in the process of having Ms. Koo, our finance director, analyze them to tell us what ultimately that will cost the city of Marque. I don't expect to have an answer for you today on that, but we can address that in the next meeting. But I will tell you that just initially, regardless of the comparable issue, the increases of 5% are going, that will be something that that the city would not be able to agree to unless it was as part of some sort of catch-up plan. The city's concern with the 5% is Senate Bill 2. It caps city revenues to 3.5%, to a 3.5% increase. We understand that it also includes new construction, but the city is currently police expenditures make up 30.7% of the city of Lamarque's general fund. The city from a financial perspective cannot take on the risk that its new construction would not be able to compensate for that 1.5% delta, because we can only increase our funds, our general fund revenues 3.5%, period, end of story. Without that's just what the position we're in. So we would be in a position now, while we understand that does not include revenues from new construction that year, we would be in a position, the council would be in a position of essentially gambling that those revenues, that 1.5% would be able to be made up by new construction. From a financial perspective, we don't believe that that's a viable alternative for the city of Marque. So while the discussion of raises, and I believe that we don't want to talk some more about that, we're willing to entertain that. I just point out initially that the 5% is somewhere we're not going to be able to go.
Can I ask for a clarification point?
Sure.
When you say the 5%, now we're talking about as we propose it to you as 5% across the board raise, or are you talking about the matrix of the pay plan itself? Or?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's the 5% across the board raise for effective October 1, 2022 and 2023.
Yeah.
Yes. And I guess for point of clarification, the proposed pay plan you gave to us, and is that 5% raises on what is currently in the salary section, or is there more going on there?
Since I didn't have the capability to cost it out because I didn't have the individual hiring data on the individual offices, I can't tell you what the cost would be. What I'll tell you is just generally, step B, which is the 1-year pay step currently being paid for the police department, is $25.50 an hour. It represents a 5.3% increase over the hiring salary. And then every different pay step within the police pay plan has a different level or different percentage different from the step before it and after. And so what we tried to do was create attachment A as the starting point, if you will. It doesn't necessarily represent 5% across the board raise, but what it does represent is taking the current step B, making it step A for the future, and then creating standardized increment step increases throughout the pay plan. And so for the rank of officer, it arrives at a conclusion that probably costs less than 5%. And then we set our sights on trying to create the promotional differential that's necessary to incent someone to promote. And so we didn't approach the first year as though it was across the board raise. We approached it as trying to get the numbers as a baseline to improve upon for future years. And so based on what you previously had talked about, if we assume this represents about a 4% across the board rate, but I can't tell you that because I can't cost it out, that would be my estimate. And so it wasn't necessarily 5% each year. It was creating that the best pay plan that we could put, making it as cost effective for the citizens as we could, and then trying to keep up with the market. And then that began the beginning benchmark to add 5% too, because we believe that's what the police market will do in the area over the course of the next 2 years, based on what we have seen thus far from the other cities. So it's all relative to discussion and you know, you have your current police pay plan, and as an example, you've got a 3.5% differential between the officer step at 3.72, a 6.32, a 5%, a 4.98%, a 9.5%, 9.5%. So basically it's all over the map. In the school of police pay plans, you normally find a very rhythmic increase in pay steps that are whatever the I guess the past practice of the city has been. In some cases it's 4%, 5%, but most of the time it's in the neighborhood of 5%. So we tried to build, for all intent and purposes, it's not the perfect pay plan, but it is a very competitive pay plan in the context of showing an employee and placing the incentive in front so they see where they go. And it's within the school of police pay plans across the state, if you will, whether it be a 4% differential that you place in your plan or a 5%. We felt like it needed to be rhythmic and it needed to be the same. And so basically you're borrowing money from the top end. You just give a cross the board raise like you have proposed, then the pay matrix stays the same. What we're proposing is that we change that matrix so that it becomes, in essence, 5 by 5% step increases. And then if you choose to take a promotional test and be promoted, then we give you a 5% increase in that step, even though it's staggered, based on tenure, which makes it less costly for the citizens to fund.
And, okay, so I guess a couple things. One, for promotional purposes, those would be testing based decisions, which is currently the case. Just make sure we're clear there. And then also for, as I understand you, the point of one of the driving motivators behind this current pay plan is to increase the delta between what the ranks are currently compensated at in the current pay plan. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's generally is a 5% delta. Well, of course, we'll
yes.
run the numbers, but yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then is there? Okay. Obviously, we're gonna have to get back to you on the cost of that.
Yes, sir.
So, and like I said. I don't
Well,
know.
based on conversations here today, it may be that we might want to modify our approach and send it back to you for consideration as well. So you might be able to cost that out as well. So
Yeah, I mean, y'all, yeah, of course, yeah.
our goal is to join with the city to try to create the very best pay plan for the police department so to move up, because that's part of the pay as well. To get higher levels of pay, you need to have higher increasing levels of responsibility. And that's what promotions are in our business. So.
And that's where I disagree, not taking, for example, Friendswood or Galveston or Lake City into this conversation, because they're in such close proximity that if there's a $10,000, $13,000, $16,000 difference, and it's only 15 to 30-minute drive, why would one of our officers not make that 20-30-minute commute for an extra at least $16,000 a year? That's why we included those cities in our market analysis.
Yeah, no,
It's a population size is what.
yeah. As I said,
And I understand, population, income and all that gets taken into account, but we included it because of the close proximity and the likelihood that our officers will leave to go to those places for that's such a increase in the base pay.
right. No, trust me, I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate the information.
We would also point out to you that that's really a conversation that needs to be had so that you focus in on what the right mix is. Because if you just want to go by population, I can pull up my democracy file and I can give you the pay plans of some of the other cities that have exactly the same population that you do, and you'll find that they're off the map because it has to do with the metropolitan area. If you talk about a city in Tarrant County or Dallas County in the DFW major metropolitan area, they must compete with one another for market share of people who want to be police officers and firefighters. So that's a driving force. So if it's population, we look at it from a standpoint, in all honesty, what's the city's ability to pay because of their tax base, because of the services they have to provide to citizens. And it's not just population based. I mean, in the general vicinity, it's tax rates. It's how much revenue you have, how much business you have. I mean, we understand it's a full rounded matrix that has to be approached and looked at to decide what is the appropriate level. We're just saying that may be a subject matter for discussion in the future. So we all have our viewpoints heard, but then we arrive at what we consider to be the absolute best mix. So we don't have to have that conversation in the future. know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah, no, and believe me, I understand where you're coming from on the tax base. We would definitely contend that our comparables of Seabrook and Alvin are similar in tax base to the city of Lamarck. But
Well, there's a lot of dynamics.
absolutely, absolutely,
And,
yeah.
and we are receptive to the mayor's pain anytime that he has to carry on a conversation with the council and the citizens about what things cost, because that's a fact of life. We all have to deal with that in our home life, and, you know, we have to manage our budgets, and we understand that. But we also understand that the constant revolving door of officers leaving the department, going to elsewhere, is also a factor in consideration, because the taxpayers have paid for them to come on board here. They paid for them to be recruited, in some cases, paid for them to be trained and equipped and so on. And so anytime you lose somebody to another police market, that represents a loss to the citizens as well. So it's a balance, and we understand that. And we look at it from a standpoint that we want to join with you to arrive at the right balance of what you can afford and what you can sell your citizens who vote for you each and every day, because that's the ultimate stakeholder here, and we all know that.
Right. So as far as the numbers are concerned, y'all, we're obviously going to go through those. And I know, were you going to send us, I guess a couple things, as to the proposal of an extension, have y'all had a chance to caucus on that? Or did you want to speak to it?
We did have a meeting, and basically I'll let the president tell you what his thoughts are.
While we certainly want to be receptive to the city's concerns regarding the need to have advice of counsel of a named city manager and a chief of police, however, we must be realistic regarding whether the police would vote to extend the contract for only 2% across the board. First, let me say that because our police pay overlaps steps and ranks, our members have no incentive to promote to corporal or even sergeant. With this current pay structure that we have, if you are a step E and you promote to corporal, you only get a 12-cent raise. So to get a 12-cent raise to be a first line supervisor, why would somebody want to take on that extra responsibility for only 12 cents an hour? So because of that, we're concerned that we may not have enough people who want to be interested to promote to corporal, sergeant, or lieutenant in the future because of such a small pay increase for such an extra responsibility that we have to deal with. While we already know that you have made provisions for a 2% increase, but please understand that although we would love to join our fellow employees in accepting this offer very positively, I am reminded that all the promoted officers sent me into this room to help fix their pay problems. There is no differential in promoted steps, and we must respectfully draw this to your attention, and that you help resolve this issue, even if it is a one-year extension.
Okay. All right. So, well, we appreciate you bringing that to our attention. And following up on my conversation with Mr. Kerr just a few minutes ago, you're with any extension, which you will not, the police are unwilling, or the police, any extension the police consider will have to, at a minimum, address this issue of pay disparity amongst the ranks. Okay.
And we're certainly willing to put pen back to paper and try to arrive at something within that context of what you're talking about. I mean, obviously the mayor and council have already made an appropriation. I'm assuming they have some type of contingency as well, so we understand that. But we want to stop the bleeding. We want to make sure that these officers, stay here. And I think there's been some provisions that y'all are, as far as adding some things and resources to the department, they're commendable. But by the same token, if you can't fill those positions for the future, then we have a problem. So.
Let me ask this. of you guys. Just so that I can understand. The council has allocated 2% pay increase to our officers. That's about $55,000. Would you all be interested? And again, just question so that I can understand and so that we can work with the council. Would you be interested in turning that 2% COLA into a package that would help kind of solve the issue of the delta and the pay rates between the ranks and things like that? Would that be something that y'all would be interested in? Did that make sense? Did the
Yes,
question?
sir.
Okay.
I think I understand what you're talking about. And I think, yes, we are interested in going in that direction. We understand that, but what we can't commit to is saying that 2% money, the 55,000 is all it's going to cost, because to resolve some of the delta issues, that's going to be a number that you cost out, and your HR director is going to cost out finance and say this is what it costs. If it's 57,000, then that's what we'd like you to entertain.
Sure.
If it's 60,000, that's what we'd like to entertain. It won't be less. I can assure you that.
Sure.
But we're talking about in the promoted ranks, for instance, we have 4 corporals that need some additional market consideration, 4 sergeants, and maybe 1 lieutenant. So although we don't think the cost will be astronomical, we can't tell you what that is right now.
Sure.
And your on-site expert is going to be your HR director in finance. So maybe the number is not 55,000, maybe it's 65,000. We want to work with you to try to arrive at the best we can.
Sure.
And not from standpoint, here would be a good analysis. The 2% across the board for the fire and or the general employees has a cost to it. What we would point out to you is our cost is less because our pay plan is staggered over the top of itself. And so, and we don't know exactly how the numbers ended up that way, but that's what the members have been talking about for 3 years now, want to try to fix now. And so we need to try to make some forward mobility on that, even if it's just a 1-year extension, because if not, we've got people that are talking about, why would I want to stay if I can go to another city and get more money, even though they may be promoted now. And we don't want to lose that experience and that expertise, and we know you don't either. So just a little bit may make a huge difference to these people in their mindset.
Sure.
Gus, what was the city stance on the specialty pay?
That's, we need to talk with our finance director some more about it, to ascertain the cost of that. What I would say is for section 9, and this will deal, for section 9, the city is, if we're gonna have specialty pay for these officers who are assigned extra duties, specifically investigators, special response, accident reconstruction. Those individuals are going to need to test for that, would be the city's position.
So would it be your position for them they would have to be promoted to corporals to serve in that capacity, or?
We don't, not potentially necessarily, but what we don't want, we want the city is going, and management is going to want some assurances that these individuals have actually tested for and are qualified to perform those duties, and nothing to say, nothing against the police union, but what we don't want is just a police the chief of police making these arbitrary decisions.
The community policing will not be held to that standard?
I would need to talk to, I know community policing is a topic that's being discussed currently. And I would need to discuss with Chief Aragon if that is something that can be tested for. I know some of these others is more easily tested for, to get his thoughts on that specific.
When you talk about testing, I mean, there's promotional testing and then there's, I guess, proficiency testing.
Correct.
I mean, we wrote a whole clause on trying to reward officers to go out and get higher levels of proficiency.
Right.
And so assignments can, within the management rights of the current contract, I would propose to you that the chief of police is the only person who can decide who is assigned to these positions. So something in addition to that would have to be, something I would suggest that you work
Broach with
the chief
him.
on. But
Yes.
But by the same token, is some of these are assignments, and the reason that we've asked for an assignment style pay is because they have additional responsibilities and they don't work like the other officers. They get paid time and a half, stuff like that. So,
Right. Yeah.
You know,
And with the assignment, the proficiency testing would just be to ensure that.
right. Well, what would, it's all over the map.
Right.
It's not uncommon for civil service cities to make people test for detectives or
Right.
detective corporal. And then only those people go into those positions. But when you're talking about being tested for your skill or your ability, I mean, some places test for detective and the study materials is investigative guides and investigative books and crime scene search techniques and things of that nature. So, I think we're good if that standard is met, but we want to make sure that that's well, we don't want to tie the hands of the chief. I'll put it like that. If you-
Yeah, no, we don't either.
If the
We
chief
just,
can only assign someone to investigative duties because they pass a promotional test to become a corporal, it would point out to you that that's 5% in and of itself.
yeah, no.
That's great with us.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying.
Yeah. Obviously.
If you had the benefit of your chief sitting here and saying, well, let me tell you the upside and the downside, you make a decision.
Right.
To be honest with you, that's what he would tell you. I
Right.
have the capability to determine who should be an investigator and who not.
Right.
If we put it into a tested position, that just means that they're tested. Now I am forced to select those folks because they promoted. So, we're good either way. We're just saying that if I give you the advice of what I've heard from many, many chiefs, they like the autonomy to be able to select those folks that are assigned in some of these positions because they believe it's a combination of training and motivation and the ability to be working without supervision. So it's more than just that test.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. That would, yes, we understand. And then for section 10 of the proposed article 11, again, we'll get back to you on the money of that, the $1 to $2.50. $1 to $2.50 change. So I believe that was all of the issues that you had brought to us. We will, as I said, get you proposed language, a proposed counter on the emergency issue. And then I will also get you proposed language on the, sorry. On the council approval of the police physical fitness program for the additional amount. And then, yeah, we had talked about the 85, the 65 to 85 for the uniform, the monthly, that was acceptable. That was, I believe all of the issues. The weather may be.
Got that generator ready?
Yeah, maybe, may have something to say about this, but were there any other outstanding issues that you wanted to raise with us?
Tom, did
that's
we lose our
it.
feet?
Do what?
Did we lose our feet?
Yeah, it went out with one of the first lightning
did it?
strikes.
We,
The TVs did.
Are we still,
That's.
we basically want to try to lay everything out as quickly as we could, so you'd have maximum amount of time to take a look at it, consider it. So there are, depending on, well, we would reserve the right, as the rules say, if you give us counter offers that we might want to counter and show you a different way or whatever. But
Absolutely.
outside of that, we think we've encapsulated everything, members that laid at our feet that we needed to bring to your attention.
Absolutely. Okay. Then I guess two things. As far as the next meeting, is a week good?
For all intent and purposes, yes, it is, but I would suggest that you need to make an appraisal of how long,
Yeah,
I'd like this lady
Yeah.
to nod her head. and say,
right.
can
Yeah,
do it.
I was looking at
If
that.
not,
I get, do you want to establish the next meeting date right now, or can we be in touch in the next day or two?
I think that, either way you want to do it, we can set a date, but I'm just afraid that 1 week would not give
Yeah.
them sufficient time to arrive at conclusion. Maybe it.
Okay, yeah, then if we can get back to you on an additional meeting date, that's.
Right.
That's fine.
Did that work? Did we cover that yet? I didn't see that.
Oh, no.
Maybe I didn't pass it out.
Article 14.
Do you have that?
Yeah, I have this. Article 16. Oh,
What number?
I can't see the 4.
I think that's the only one we're gonna touch on.
Well, judging by the few copies I have left, I think I handed it to you, but since I have plenty, I'll give you to you again.
No, I don't think. Maybe you did. Yeah, no.
And it's something, it's really, would you like me to go ahead and give you a capsule version so you understand why?
Sure.
Okay, formerly in the collective bargaining agreement, we created the position of corporal and stated it would be a civil service promoted rank, which the city has implemented. And so for it to be outlined as it were in the old language wouldn't be appropriate anymore. So what we're suggesting is that we strike out that language and then put in, this already occurs, I suspect, with your staffing ordinance and your local civil service rules, but we're saying that the police department would consist of officers, corporals, sergeants, and lieutenant. That way we wouldn't, that is within the management rights of the city to change that. But right now we've created the corporal rank in the previous contract, and this, this just adds it to the mix. And then basically says it will be tested and filled in accordance with 143, which is already what was previously in the contract. It's just that the language wasn't appropriate to continue into the next agreement because it was language of creation nature. So it's basically exactly what you do now, and it's not any different. We scratched out, training officer not being considered a rank is elementary. It's not. I don't think it has to be stated, but that doesn't bother us. We're just trying to clean it up. And then for qualifications, the qualifications are already outlined in 143, and these are really no different. There's already an established procedure for testing and how you fill those. Since there was an issue that came up during the duration of this contract where the chief had to open it up to others, we would prefer to see that be done by the local commission that makes that decision, which is within their purview now. And so they would do the same thing. Instead of it saying the chief, it would say, it would be done by the Civil Service Commission. But there's nothing heinous here. So let your civil service director review it and tell you what and not to discount the fact you have law card.
No,
She is the operational person that must ensure that the local Civil Service Commission stays within its rules and does the promotional aspects and everything. This is nothing different. It's just,
and this last sentence you added about the council adopting additional classifications, was that added because in the new budget, the Lamarque City Council has approved a deputy chief?
Not necessarily. It's for some other council. The agreement said that whatever position immediately below the chief, but above the lieutenant would be appointed, and we don't disagree with that.
Right.
But the council has the purview to create other positions if it chooses to. We just want to be perfectly crystal clear that the appointed position will be that's immediately below the chief. If tomorrow the chief asks for and the council creates captains and majors and colonels, and that's within their purview and their management right. But we just want to make sure that whatever position it is, if there's an assistant chief, well, that's who the chief will appoint. If there is no assistant chief, but you give them a captain and that's the position immediately below the chief, then he gets to appoint that or he or she gets to appoint that captain. So we just want to make sure that it's crystal clear and there's no, because we can't control what the chief may want and ask the council for what the council may award. But we just want to make sure that if it's an assistant chief, a deputy chief, a captain, or whatever that position is, that's y'all's purview. Name it what you want to. We just want that to be known that that's a position. So there's no semantics involved. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have to get back to you on this. Okay.
And I apologize. I thought I had handed that out to everybody. And I said I had 10 copies and I ended up so.
No problem. No problem. Okay, then I believe that was all we had for today. I will be in touch with you, John, about additional dates.
Yes, sir.
New dates. I guess, and we will go from there.
Like I said, a week was fine with us, but I just want to make sure
Right.
that you don't short yourself on
Yeah, no.
staff time, because
Absolutely, absolutely.
instead of having to postpone or, show up and not have all the data, it would be better for us to move
Right.
forward, And so we look forward to that.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Anybody have anything? Good. Well, we certainly appreciate, the time you've invested to work with us.
Oh, no, absolutely. You good?